Welcome, faraway friends, curiosity seekers, and connoisseurs of fantasy everywhere. We're delighted to have you with us today, and with me today is a very special person in the pantheon of Darkeport, without which this whole thing doesn't work. So I guess without further ado, I'll go ahead and let him speak for himself as he does so well. Justin, would you like to tell our faraway friends something about yourself?
Yeah. So Justin Roush, I am the CTO and our executive producer here at Darkeport, and I have known Angel since we were well in high school. I think we discovered each other in the lunch room or something at some point.
I think that's true. Yes, but back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. Yes.
We've been gaming since that time, since we were teenagers, and when we were going to be a part of making this, I knew I definitely wanted to be involved, and here we find ourselves.
Awesome. So I have a number of questions that I wanted to run through with you, and I have not shared any of these with Justin because that's how I roll. And I wanted to start with something that I've already heard when we spoke at AggieCon, and that you had already fielded, but this way we just have it memorialized and you don't have to answer it 10,000 times, is why are you doing this? Why are you producing this?
Right. So I really wanted to find something that was missing, I guess, kind of in my day-to-day life. I would say after COVID, things really sort of, became a lot more isolated. I wasn't even going into the office anymore for work. It had changed a great deal in terms of what work actually meant, and I found that I was really missing a creative outlet in my life. We weren't even meeting for game and things like that. And so for me personally, it felt like I had reached a point in my life where I not only really missed sort of having that creative itch to scratch in my life, I wanted to leave a little bit of a mark of myself on the world and kind of put something out there that would, last, or something I could point to and say, this is mine. And so for me, this feels like a project that lets me feel like I kind of get to put my mark on the world a little bit.
No, I hear that, and most of our faraway friends wouldn't know that we had a long-running campaign, various kinds of campaigns. D&D was one of them, but we did like Star Wars and Cthulhu and Champions and just all manner of stuff. And that was hard. It was hard to be separated from each other like that, even though we had some tech solutions, to try to keep gaming together. That was not an easy time, and I don't think we're alone in that. So, okay, thank you. And then I guess the follow-up to that is, let me pause. So the whole reason that we're doing this is I want to not only get, one of my dearest friends in the world out and kind of acknowledge what the incredible job that he's doing basically alone, like the one-man production crew of Darkeport, but also I want this to be something that's of use to you, the viewer. If you were thinking about how would I stream a game at a high level, like the production value here is crazy. It's way exceeds anything that I was ever thinking about, and honestly thought we could do. So I've never said that on camera, but it's true. It's just, you've really blown me away with what you've managed to do with the lighting and the timing and the sound, and we'll get into all of that. And then before I forget, ADHD brain, the kind of expanded technical stuff that I'm not going to get into today, we're going to go ahead and leave a link in the description for the presentation that you did at AggieCon, that you and Corey, our CEO and who plays Merrick, did at AggieCon. And then that way, if you, the audience, are interested in kind of getting into the nitty gritty of it, Justin had some really good slides on there and some follow up, and you can you're available, I think, to email and like that. Yeah. Justin at darkeport.com, right? Just that simple. So in that context, the second question is, what space does gaming occupy in your life?
Boy, the simple answer to that one, I would say, is actually escapism. Okay. I've always just enjoyed the fantastic elements that come with it. You get to kind of, explore things. I will say that as I gamed more and more, I found that I was doing, research on things like Roman society, or just, looking up World War II or World War I history, or, weird skills, or picking up strange things, or just researching stuff I never would have without it. And, as much as it is about sort of the fun and the escapism about getting into the game and actually really enjoying doing all of that and just kind of having a good time and getting to kind of expand yourself, or just, just hang out with friends, I found that it really grew me as a person, and that I almost sort of discovered that I had sort of this epiphany that I had a reason to learn again, or to really become interested in growing again as a person long after leaving school.
Yeah.
And, I almost hope to kind of impart that thought process even earlier in my kids' lives, because that wasn't something I discovered until much later on. Because it sort of took a while for that to sort of manifest itself as really something that was important to me, and I guess it's provided a good motivation to just become a more well-rounded individual.
Which you're doing an amazing job at, by the way. For the public game that I run every Saturday, Eliana, Justin's brilliant daughter, also plays with us, and she holds her own and is incredible. So Eliana, if you see this, you're doing a great job, baby. So even though she was sick and we had to do some distance stuff last time, but she got that experience too. She got when we did that for the home campaign, it was like a year or something that you were having to use the owl for that creature. There is a whole second conversation. I mean, you just reminded me of something, Justin, as far as like rediscovering your love of learning, that it doesn't have to be, for some people do better in like formal academic settings, some people not so much. And I've known you long enough to say you always did better when you were kind of self-directed and you were pursuing what you were interested in and what was fascinating to you. That's been like a pattern, both of our lives really, but I think that was super important for you to find what resonated with you and follow it. And you have, you've done a damn good job at it. And I wish, like I said, whole other conversation, but it got me thinking about that. And I know that even some of the players around this table have expressed some maybe surprise at things that they've learned and places that they've gone and things that they've needed to take in to embody their characters and stuff like that. And I definitely, most of my like survival training has been desert. So this, like getting the Riverlands and all that, and that's kind of been a little bit mind-blowing for me. So I wanted to ask specifically, because I don't want to bury the lead, can you kind of hone in on the key parts of your production journey as the executive producer of Darkeport? What you thought you were going to have to do, and then what you wound up doing, and then some of the key components that you think a young, or not, but I mean, however, like somebody just starting out in this would benefit from hearing.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be hard not to just go off on a tangent here. So there's so much involved with the, there's so many elements that go with it, and I guess maybe trying to be succinct here. Everyone's going to basically come up with a different way of doing what they want to do. I would say have a vision of what it is that you want to try to do, whether you're working that out all on your own as a producer, or even, if you're just like a one-shop GM or whatever that kind of handles everything.
You don't know anybody like that.
Yeah. Try to be consistent with what it is that you want to do in terms of your vision. And then just start honestly asking for lots of help, looking up lots of videos, trying to figure things out like that. I will say that there are some things that are going to be more important than others. Okay. So right at the top of the list is sound. And that one has been just the kind of thing that we've had to really work with. I guess they're probably not in the shot here, but we actually have microphones above our heads rather than like either on the table or using lapel mics or something like that. And that was a conscious decision because we wanted to have a certain aesthetic and whatnot. And that was hard. It actually made things really, really difficult to basically do what we did. And so, if you're on a budget, don't necessarily go straight for the moon in terms of what you're trying to do. Maybe just have a microphone in front of people, and that's going to be easier. But sound, in short, because you guys can always contact me if you need to get more details, but sound is going to probably be the number one thing that you want to try to focus on. I put it in the slides, and it was a little tongue-in-cheek, but I still hold by it, which is that, audio is 50% of your video, and 100% if it's bad audio. So basically what that means is that people are not going to watch videos that have bad audio in it. They'll forgive, they'll forgive, scratchy, low res videos, things like that, even like poor quality lighting, but audio they just won't.
Momentary loss of feed and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so again, trying to not ramble too much, but sound is probably, going to be the most important thing that you really want to try to focus on.
I'm going to follow up then. What would you recommend for someone, and I'll hit some of the other elements as well, but what would you recommend if someone is on a budget? Say it's a group of you and your friends, 3, 4, 5 friends that you're getting together. Okay, we know we want to stream. We know we want to do this thing. We have different skills. What would you recommend in terms of getting for the sound that's going to give you the best bang for the buck at the very beginning of that?
Yeah, I've heard people use even omnidirectional microphones. In theory, could use something like a conference microphone, but I really don't think they sound great. At least not for something like a stream production, because you get all of the room ambience that goes with it. If you're going to focus on a microphone, pick up a budget-friendly, even a used microphone, and that's something you can actually just put in front of the players. That's actually a relatively accepted thing you see in most streams these days, anyway.
I'd agree with that.
It'll cut the cost way down. Get probably a dynamic mic because it's not as sensitive to the room, so you just have to get a little bit closer, but it just gets the audio of the person talking into it.
Okay.
But anything where you can basically bring the gain down, control the ambiance of the room and that kind of thing. Believe it or not, in terms of audio, just setting up your room to be more set for clean audio. So put up soft areas, use rugs or carpet, treat the room, that kind of stuff. You're actually going to get way more bang for your buck out of that than you are out of any fancy like mixers or any kind of fancy microphones or any other post AI style cleanup or whatever that people might want to try to use.
Right. No, we definitely noticed it when we put up I think it was moving curtains, right? Moving blankets that we put up around you can't.
I will say everything from the table. I don't know. Once in a while you'll see on stream where the tables have these like little rubber mats. They actually serve two purposes, including to kind of mask the echo in the room bit or the reverb in the room. These back panels are actually really hard to kind of deal with because they bounce sound all over the place. But between them we have kind of heavy duty moving blankets and carpet. So anything you can do to treat the room, that's going to go way farther than just about anything else you can do. And
I know some people are going to be asking, why wouldn't you use lapel mics?
So
we did talk about
we did. We
kicked
it around, and to be fair, like we still sort of kick it around once in a while. It was an additional thing, and honestly, like I didn't know what I was doing when I was getting into a lot of this stuff, and so
appreciate the honesty.
I mean, lapel mics might be the kind of thing you could do, but you introduce some new issues. We have to worry about getting hooked up on the subjects. You have to worry about whether there's a rustle of the clothes. They're all omnidirectional in and of themselves, so if you're close to each other, you're theoretically picking each other up on each other's microphone.
Okay.
What we use are actually low bar style microphones. I mean, they're shotgun mics, which are technically a no-no, but they're very, very focused. And so we just didn't introduce some new problems with lapel mics basically being introduced into our stream. Now, I will say that if I was going to use a lapel mic at all, I would probably put it on you because you're the one who tends to stand up and move and whatnot. So it's still kind of on the table, but we just just wasn't what we originally decided we wanted to try to do.
Okay, so, and it would have had its own issues.
It would have had its own issues
as well.
And to be fair, like some of them I don't even know that I know because we haven't ever really tried to go down that route.
I am going to circle back around to sound again a little bit more broadly later on because I have another question, a couple questions low, but just to put a bow on it for now. How do the lapel mics versus the table mics go in terms of cost?
I don't know.
Okay.
Lapel mics are probably a little bit more expensive in some regards, just because there's extra stuff you have to do, especially talking about wireless. I mean, you start introducing wireless issues and whatever, but there's just more complication to it. So there's probably a more inherent cost to that, but I could actually be off on that one.
Okay.
You can pick up some pretty good microphones that are on the desk or in front of the players for a pretty decent, a good budgeted amount of money.
And I want to tell our audience that one of the reasons why I'm hitting this is because one of the concerns that we had making that presentation is we wanted to be really realistic about what equipment people would have and what skills they would need and how much time and energy it would take to create this. Our CEO with his own two hands built with a little bit of help from some of the players, but I mean essentially built the scaffolding for all of these beautiful backdrops to be painted on.
I will say, and this goes beyond just the sound, one of the main things I was looking for as a producer was to basically try to lift as much complication off of the players as possible. So kind of one of the reasons not to use the lapel mics was that it was one more thing you guys were going to have to worry about, moving around or anything else like that. And so if I could remove that as an element to put on you guys in terms of, that on top of like not wiggling around too much in the chair or being on microphone or whatever, like that, I figured that would let you have sort of mental cycles more dedicated to like your character development and, kind of putting yourself into the scene, that kind of stuff. So that was sort of what I was going for.
I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for it. I have enough. I only have so much RAM, getting older. I'm glad that there's one less. I already freak out enough about the sound as it is anyway. I am going to get back to your kind of broader philosophy a little bit deeper in because I don't feel like you had. And you don't feel like you had, I know, because we talked, didn't have like a full kind of airing of that at the presentation that y'all gave at AggieCon. So it'd be good, again, to get that just kind of out there so that people can hear it. And if it works for them, I think it has a lot of merit. Okay, awesome. So let's see. Of course, my little matrix brain has these all scattered all over the place. I guess to follow up on what we were talking about, what were some of the pitfalls that you ran into where you started down a pathway and if you want to talk about it, because we only talked about sound, so maybe like lighting or one of the other elements, what was a pitfall or what was a tech tree that you started to go down and then you're like, nope, that's not going to work for us. And then you had to reverse. Like, what was that process? Because that will happen during this. You're going to try things that are experiments, and not all experiments are going to be successes. So give us an example of that and kind of how you recovered from that.
Oh, boy. I'm going to try not to because we could hyper-focus on this whole conversation can be about sound. No, like one of the things...
It is that important.
Yeah, we actually replaced the mixer. Like, I would say that that was probably the biggest thing that we did. And, learning kind of how to do room treatments, things like that. In terms of other things that occurred, let's see. I basically took some classes and did some things on camera work,
I forgot
kind of thing.
I forgot that.
Just basically trying to figure out how to better use what we've got. I mean, we've got some, Sony ZV-10s, and those, we're currently using the kit lens, and so we're trying to get as much as we can, kind of bang for buck out of that. And so I had to learn about, better ways to use everything from the apertures and the ISO and the, all that stuff for the cameras. That wasn't really like a replacement that we had to do. I would say the one thing that we experimented with is our above camera table.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So it's without having to kind of go into a crazy, DMX, I think is what it is, solution for being able to control the camera. We have a PTZ camera, a pan tilt zoom camera that we use above our table to kind of give sort of that battle view. It's not great in terms of the picture quality compared to sort of our main cameras.
Right.
And so I am currently researching solutions around that. There's the newer version of what they make I'm going to experiment with that goes from 8 megapixel to 50 megapixel. So we're basically just sort of like upgrading the camera. In terms of non-equipment replacement / upgrade solutions, though, I found like little things like these beautiful backgrounds that we have. For example, like when we first started out doing our original play tests in this room, we kind of zoomed all the way out so we could actually get as much of the background as we possibly could.
Oh, that's a good point.
And, you know, people like seeing people. So we sort of came to the conclusion, no, we need to zoom in. And, you know, as attractive as these things are, it actually is a much more engaging experience for people to actually see the players closer, even though they're not seeing as much of the you know, pretty background. And even to that point, right, people will often watch this stuff on mobile devices, and so it's even smaller. And so what I have found, or what I keep trying to do, is improve upon, you know, zooming in on the players and trying to like get different views and change things up. And that's just been a constant effort on my part to try to make that better and better, to kind of keep the views fresh and to kind of keep, you know, people engaged, because I think sometimes if you're just staring at the same thing for 3 hours straight, you're just going to get a little misty-eyed.
Right, it's monotonous. Yeah. Gosh, there are two questions I want to ask you simultaneously about that kind of occurred to me as you were discussing that. I guess the first is, what is your approach to breaking up the visual monotony? Because 3 hours is it's a long time to stare at something. And especially, I would say in the last month or so, I've noticed when I've gone back and watched the streams, you've like really gone out of your way to just have these little blips of activity, and sometimes it's changing shots, and sometimes it's something in what we call the info box, but where the character sheet is displayed, and et cetera like that, and it freshens it up. It makes it more live. But how did you determine? Because I just for the audience, like I don't know any of these things that are going on. This is that when I'm up here storytelling, I'm up here storytelling. Like the rest of unless the studio's on fire, I don't know about it.
Right,
I'm just like total tunnel vision of what's going on. I can't do it any other way. Somebody else maybe can do it better, but that's how I do it. So I'm not even thinking about any of that stuff. So how do you make those decisions? And you've explained a little bit, and you decide how much in the weeds you want to get in terms of like the cinematography of it, but. So
the guiding principle, in some ways, the most concrete guiding principle, I guess I could say, is you know, first let me say we've basically used the idea that people want to see people. And so the whole idea of being able to sort of zoom in and sort of personalize it kind of against, you know, like when Marcus is doing his conversations, or when, you know, I'm going to try and get more and more kind of in on the person who's basically doing the journal reading and that kind of stuff, because it makes it feel more intimate, right? It makes it feel like you're sort of engaged more with what that person's thinking about or what have you. And so it brings that element to it. But the guiding principle really in my head is, what would I want to see? You know, like if I'm an audience member, there's sort of a phrase or turn of phrase, I guess you could use, which is be the customer, or in this case, sort of be the audience.
Right.
You know, if I was watching this as an audience member, what would I want to see? The rest of it's all been driven based on feedback.
Yeah.
You know, we have people in live chat who say, "Hey, I'd like to be able to see what's like where this is happening on the map."
That's new.
just little things like that. And so anything that I feel like I can realistically try to bring to the screen to kind of explain in a visual way what's going on with the characters, I think helps sort of deliver the message in the story in a way that means that the players and the conversation going on don't have to change.
Absolutely.
It just says, oh, okay, I know this is happening in the keep, or I know this is happening down at the healing hall, or what have you.
So one thing I'll add to that, I agree with all that, and I see the impact of that. I see the tangible impact of that when I go back and watch these streams, and I'm pretty, it's hard to say when you're in the bubble, right? But the consensus has been from the feedback I've gotten, and I do seek out as much critical feedback as I can. Is basically we've been getting stronger and kind of getting the ship's getting we're running the ship more tightly here. Kind of more precise, and a lot of that is because of the production. Lost my train of thought. So the second, it'll come back to me. So the second question I wanted to ask you though was on the flip side of that. What do you think about the school of thought of just, hey, I'm gonna film this on my phones. We're just gonna do the thing and get it out there. Like if I want to stream, my buddies and I want to stream. We all have pocket. We all have pocket production, production crews there, and we're just gonna do the thing.
Go for it.
Go for it. Good.
Yeah. I mean, really, we learned so much by just coming in here and practicing.
You should tell a little bit about that, because that was the whole thing at the beginning. We're like trying to get that precious studio time, and how hard it is. You would say how hard it is to recreate the environment.
Right. Yeah. We sort of, even before this room was sort of put together, we kind of practiced what it was like to be on set or on kind of in a stream, and so little quirky things like the one we tend to cite a lot is how having crosstalk conversations happening at the same time is just not something you can do on stream. But for our money, right? Like we talked about being able to have like more of the stuff in the background in the shot, but that really sort of took away from the personable nature of the shot that was happening. I would say just start going through it. My advice, and I gave this even when we were at the con, which is that if you're going to do this, just start basically going through the motions of getting it done, putting it up on stream, but make it like unlisted or private or what have you, and just review it for yourselves. Right. You will discover so much about what you have to do and why you have to do it. It is going to be the best teacher that you can possibly have. Yeah.
It definitely was.
That will carry you much farther, much faster than anything around being able to try to just like launch. And if sort of. We released our session 0 earlier this year because we had sickness running around.
Some difficulties, yeah.
And it was never, the joke is it was never meant to see the light of day. It was actually sort of our go or no go sort of session.
Yep.
And but there are other episodes before that like the sound is messed up and that the visuals aren't quite right and the lighting isn't quite right and the cameras aren't where they need to be. And I mean, just little things, that we just never really.
Well, like we lost. It's definitely an evolution. If you look at those earliest things, I'm trying to remember which one. There was like one where we just lost a chunk of it too. And so you need to figure out that infrastructure, the big fat infrastructure pieces as well, as the small pieces. Obviously, vastly more than I do about that, but it was just like, oh wow, that can happen. Your whole stream, or 60% of your stream can just go up in smoke if it's not captured correctly. So we've kind of already covered this, but I guess I wanted to ask you specifically. When you started this, because again, I'm trying to frame this as like a naive group is going in, naive in the sense of they haven't streamed before, and this can be helpful for them. What's the distance between what you thought producing this show was going to be and what the actuality of producing this show is?
I really didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't. Candidly, it's funny because I sort of started this whole thing off by saying that, I felt like this really kind of scratched a particular creative itch that I was missing in my life. Right. But, I've been one of those people that I've never really quite known what I wanted to say. And so like building websites or something kind of early on when the internet sort of came to be, when everyone was doing that, I just wasn't didn't put myself out there.
Right.
And I've never, as things have progressed, and now that things are done in sort of more of a audio-visual medium, I still never really did that stuff. So I didn't have any previous experience where I'd like streamed to YouTube before, or anywhere else for that matter. At best, I'd like done a little bit of internship at like a local television studio long ago, and I mean, it wasn't like I was on the equipment or whatever. It was just sort of helping to set up the sets and things like that.
Different tech.
Yeah, different tech.
It's fair to say. Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't really know. I mean, maybe I don't know if that was a good thing or not. Maybe sometimes ignorance makes you just sort of blindly do things, with enthusiasm that you wouldn't otherwise.
There's no way, hell you would do otherwise. Yeah.
But honestly, I just tried to learn as much as I could from people that had done this before. I mean, in terms of being able to actually get something up on a platform, it's not. I didn't find it that difficult. It really was more around the logistics of like coming up with sort of our look and our feel and being able to kind of apply that, and then being consistent about it. Right? That's because you don't want to have like weird random artwork that doesn't seem to match, and songs that are just one day you're doing like weird techno music and the other one it's like fantasy, and like, that's not going to work. I mean, a lot of it just was the logistics of being able to get the look and the feel to be consistent, and being able to do it consistently. That's the hard part, is just getting it out. I think
I'm gonna press you a little bit on that and dig deeper. How accurate, like you're coming up on this technical problem and you have a lot of experience. I know you, I know what you've worked in, all that. We didn't go into all that detail, but you've seen tech writ large from a lot of different angles. How accurate were you, or how well were you able to identify what the actual problem was and then come up with a solution to it? How difficult was that process for you in general as you've been going through? Fairly easy and like relatively smooth sailing, or have there been some things you've really had to sit on and grapple with and that? Because I'm useless with this, I mean, Corey's a little bit of help, but I mean, it's like you're really kind of the prime mover in this, and if you can't figure it out, we're in a not in a great place. So
I would say, so you can get to like the first 50% pretty easily.
Okay.
Right. And then it just gets increasingly more difficult. And so, it's I guess it's kind of hard to quantify that answer to that question.
No, it is. But, it's a hard,
just doing something is not that complex, but doing something to make it look better. Like I go through and I really make sure that the cameras are as focused as I can make them before the shows, for example. And that's not something I used to do. I mean, I used to do a lot more stuff around just getting the basics set up. And so, what I've done is that a lot of the complexity, if I'm able to like automate it away, I'll do so. But like getting to the point where it's at a stage that I think it looks good enough or sort of meets a certain criteria, man, that last 10% or whatever is, that you have to sometimes claw your way forward. And so you'll get to that 50%, and then it's like, okay, you try something else, and maybe you'll get to like 70%, and then you'll find that last 80, 90% or whatever you're trying to do, like you really have to like make some decisions about what you're going to do. I know that's a pretty general answer to that question, but
it was a general question, but I wanted to hear that. I wanted to get that out.
I will say, if we're talking about trying to encourage people to sort of do this on their own, like practice before you do it, and you'll get yourself into a position where you're going to be able to do a much better job of making something that you feel is ready to go. But then just continue to work at it, and just analyze what it is that you're working on, right? Like maybe this week it's sound, maybe next week you're going to figure out something about the the visuals that you don't quite like.
Try to work on everything simultaneously.
Right. Yeah. And then you'll find what I think is important for us to have done is that work on the basics, right? Make the sound consistently good, make the visuals consistently good. And when you get there, you've sort of freed up some of the cognitive complexities, especially if you're able to sort of automate some of that away or use, stream decks or whatever to kind of turn what used to be multiple actions into buttons or whatever. Like that frees you up to do new and interesting things and even like experiment with new stuff. I mean, we haven't really even touched on, the lighting in this room in terms of what we're able to do with it.
We haven't really used the lighting to capacity
right.
yet.
Yeah. Initially we didn't have any sound going in the room, and
huge difference.
Huge
difference to hear the music in here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if people necessarily know that, but the music that you hear on stream is actually put through the mixer, and you're hearing it sort of cleanly, but technically they're hearing it at the same time in the room, and it was a little tricky to make it so that they could hear it, but not necessarily get picked up on the mics.
I mean, I've definitely noticed as the storyteller, dungeon master, whatever. Vampire the Masquerade term, so storyteller. I've definitely noticed that it elevates the role play.
Yeah,
when we're hearing the music, it just does. And
I think as a producer, that's part of my goal. Again, is not just to make it so that there's less cognitive complexity for all of you guys to not think about the tech in here or the stream itself. Right? I want that stuff to sort of disappear. And then on top of that, if there's a way to help like enhance the mood, whether that be with the sound and, sooner or later probably with the lighting, and then, maybe we'll have additional like effects or something that we do that help kind of like bring all that stuff to.
Do you think because you have your own wealth of roleplay experience that impacts how you approach things as a producer?
Oh, I'm sure it does. I don't know that I think about that to some degree. Yeah, sure.
I mean, do you ever think like, if I were gaming in there, this is what I would want? So okay,
I think that's an extension of the audience. If I'm an audience member watching it, what would I want to see? But sure, no. I mean, I could definitely like picture myself sitting in this room thinking, it'd really be nice if I could actually like hear the music and kind of like catch the mood of what's going on.
Because I'm not going to say that somebody who's never gamed before wouldn't have come to that same conclusion that you did, like about the music, but that definitely helped.
Sure.
I think that definitely helped. Okay. So since you kind of already started to allude to it, Justin, I wanted to get to your philosophy of I would call it Kaizen, continuous small improvements, but your philosophy when you're as far as a producer, and it can be broader than that too, but just in this project, how you've been approaching it. You've already said one of the key tenets is trying to reduce the variables, but
yeah. So that's a term I keep sort of using. My day job is actually being a software developer. And so, and really even to some degree, a little bit of a product manager from time to time when necessary. Without getting into a whole spiel about, software development philosophies and techniques and what have you, right? Like this is what they would generally refer to as agile development, where you basically like make a bunch of small improvements and you just basically, put something out there and you get some feedback and then you improve on it and you make changes and, that's just sort of a more modern development philosophy that kind of permeates away a lot of what I think. As
opposed to, what was the old school?
It used to be referred to as waterfall development, where they would basically plan everything out from the very top to the bottom. I mean, there's a lot of bureaucracy that went with it, and once you were committed, like that was it. Like changing it was a bit like trying to adjust a giant ship that just was incredibly difficult to change.
Okay,
and so hence the agile name, right? Sure. They wanted to be able to have like faster ways to getting things out. I mean, to me, that feels like a pretty natural way to do things, and I don't necessarily know that was exclusively on my development background philosophy, but it gave me more of a language to maybe help to describe some of that stuff.
Sure.
But no, I mean, to me, like part of this job or part of this, thing that we're doing is,
it's hard to describe.
Well, no,
which I'll get to later on too, but yeah.
No, I mean, like part of this needs to be part of this needs to feel like it's a journey that you can enjoy being on.
It is
otherwise, I mean, it's a lot of work. I mean, because, we're, throughout the week we're putting together different videos and we're cleaning things up. Maybe
back and
we're
forth
trying to,
and back and yep.
yeah,
A lot of communication.
And when it's not technical stuff, it's business stuff, and when it's not business stuff, it's like game related stuff. And so it's
or logistic stuff, or interpersonal stuff, or or somebody's sick, or
exactly,
yeah.
right. So it's not this whole thing needs to be something that is something that you feel like you can grow from and something you can enjoy doing, and that can be tough sometimes. And so maybe joy isn't the right word, like satisfaction, right? You feel some sense of
we've had that conversation before.
Just some sort of sense of growth and some sort of sense of accomplishment is really what I feel like is going to be important for sustainability around this whole thing. And I mean, everyone, if you can do so, and hopefully you do, is find some really awesome people to work with, because whether that be the cast, the crew,
if you don't like the people you're taking this journey with, you're not going to make it.
Right.
You got to really like each other, because you are going to test it. You were going to test each other.
Everyone, everyone has to come to the table with a kind of an honest approach of both good and bad criticisms. And honestly, a lot of what I've kind of going back to an earlier point, a lot of what I've changed sometimes has just been like criticism, right? It's sometimes things never make it to air because people said before that ever basically made it.
Or like the volume levels on the pilot in the first couple of episodes, where we were really trying to get all those ratios correct.
Yeah,
that was hard.
And so I would just say make it a process that you can. I keep wanting to say enjoy, but maybe that works, right? But it's really more about like feel like you can get some sense of accomplishment.
I was just about to say that. Yeah. So I wanted to drill down on that, two specific questions. One, can you give us a really sterling example of when you've taken that agile development approach to something in Darkeport, and you've been able to resolve a problem or an issue?
Let's see, boy, I might trim this part.
No, it's fine. No, I'm putting you on the spot. Like I said, this is just me. I'm firing this. This is stuff that you and I normally don't get to talk about, because any time that we have is precious. And so it's like, okay, all right, Justin, can we get this theme song in the WIs? Can we get this? Is this like practical? Because I have to run everything through this man I have to pull myself in and, ground myself about what is actually possible in terms of having one person produce everything that we're doing here. So,
I would say, weirdly enough, the thing that seems to be most poignant around that question to me is what we're actually doing as a final product working. For me,
that's a good pull star.
For me these days, it's the hardest thing for me is okay, we put it out there. Did that actually draw people in? Did it keep people engaged? What do the numbers look like around that stuff on our YouTube statistics or what have you? And that, I guess, I feel like I've had to really adjust, and I've really had to come to certain decisions around how much do things like thumbnail appearances matter, and how much do titles matter, and how much do how much will people forgive when there are mistakes made on stream or just
some more like being flexible.
Sometimes it's just about taking a little bit of your ego maybe out of it and trying to use data, I guess, to kind of use sort of this agile thing, right? Like try to take your biases out of the equation and make sure that you're really looking at the data that is going to tell you how it's resonating.
Well, one of the Justinisms that just popped into my head is leave your ego at the door.
Yeah.
Or check your ego at the door, I think is how you phrase it. And that's resonates with me through that. You said that early on in this project, and I think about that sometimes.
Even when I've managed people, I really think about that a lot. because what your view is not always the way that other people are going to look at stuff.
Not at all.
And
Especially a bunch of stubborn, creative people.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever it takes.
And to me, I know this isn't necessarily about like us as founders, but
Right.
I feel like one of the better things that we have been able to accomplish is the fact that we're all pretty honest with each other. And I feel like anytime someone actually comes to the table and says, I have a problem or I don't like this, like I don't feel like it's like a personal attack or a slight or something like that. It always feels like people are coming from an honest place around making the project itself better.
Ooh, that has been hard sometimes. That has been hard sometimes.
Yeah, it has. And Corey's usually interested in making sure that, we're presenting a proper image, and you're concerned about the integrity of the story and how you want to do it. And I care a lot about like making sure that we're able to deliver and make it sustainable. And it's just, those things are not always, there's a lot of tug and war there.
There are some inherent tensions there.
Yeah.
There are some inherent tensions because in a homebrew, my budget is whatever I can describe. And Icahn has English, like I got a lot of words up here, and so I can describe a lot of things, and I can take you on a little journey. When you're talking about a streamed production, it's a whole different thing. And then also like coordinating with you, even so, let's say that we have this, the Battle of the Broken Tower, right? You have this whole elaborate situation with the minis, and then it's like, oh crap, have I checked how the camera angle is on this,
Yeah.
And that sort of thing, because you're going to have to deal with whatever shenanigans I'm pulling to try to track it with the battle cam. So that's a whole there are like layers and layers and layers to this experience that can be not necessarily all in sync with each other, even though we're all trying to get the same thing, which is to tell the best damn story that we can.
Yeah.
The second thing that I wanted to ask you about specifically was, can you give an example of when you had a collection of variables and you were really able to successfully hammer it down and automate it? And like how a newcomer could take that approach, not just for that exact fact pattern, Justin, but use it more broadly so that they could reenact that themselves and simplify things.
You're looking for a specific set of examples?
Something specific that you did, but also like explain it in a way that other people can be like, okay, I see the underlying approach that he's using, that kind of thing.
I actually have a couple of them I can kind of do, even recently. So we multi-stream now currently.
Yes, we do. We did that.
We're experimenting with it, right?
Yep.
So right now we currently stream to YouTube, but now we are also starting to stream to Twitch.
Yep.
And we had to figure out a way to do that because every place was either incredibly expensive, wouldn't let you do it at a very high resolution, and or sometimes all three where they just wouldn't let you do it for more than like a couple hours at a time, max.
Right. Yep.
So it was like, well, that won't work, and that won't work. So we had to come up with some solutions. And basically at this point, I figured out how to make it work with an AWS Media Live stuff, which there's practically no instructions whatsoever. And to basically save on cost, right? Like I told you, I'm a developer kind of in my day job, right? Like I'll use something like Terraform to deploy the infrastructure only when we need it. And I don't have to sit there and monkey around with how we basically set it up and make mistakes because I'm doing it by hand each and every time. So, I basically just issue a command for what we want to do, and that deploys it. We got it ready to go. We're only paying for it when we need to, and then I tear it down when we're done. And that saves our cost. It basically is very repeatable.
I hope you understand what he's talking about, because I'm barely following, but yeah.
If anybody has questions, you're free to ask. And so, that's kind of one of those things I did kind of behind the scenes. Another one was basically how we used to go to transitions. So, when, we would go to intermission or whatever, I mean, I was basically like sitting there with, the audio on one side and being able to switch things, I had to queue things up and get things ready. So I was basically like manipulating 2 or 3 things, sometimes 3 or 4 things all at once, just to kind of like go to black and switch over.
While trying to listen to me and get all of those cues. Yeah.
Right. And so, it's kind of sitting there writing, what was going to happen.
Well, that's when I was joking about you being a freaking octopus in the control booth.
Yeah, Kraken apparently.
Kraken.
I'm loving it.
Oh, it's a Kraken now? Okay. You've been upgraded, sir. Good. Well played.
But, I finally figured out a better way, and it took a little experimentation, but I basically boiled it down to being able to automate that process. And now I have a button that basically handles all that stuff for me. It does a fade to black. It switches things over to the proper input. It switches off the fade to black, and then it brings the video stream up with the sound basically being switched sort of all in one go. And so the chance for mistakes has gone way down. And it's made my life a lot easier.
Right.
And I would say sort of the general takeaway from all of that is anything you can do that you find as a pattern, especially if it's particularly complex, if you're able to find ways to script it or automate it or simplify it, even because sometimes it's not just about like throwing technology at it, sometimes just literally simplifying the problem, like putting up sound treatment in the room is a perfect example of how to simplify the problem of bad sound into better sound without having to like throw huge amounts of technology at the problem, right? Anything you can do to basically simplify, i.e. reduce the number of variables that you have to deal with, that is going to make it a much more sustainable practice, and it's going to make your quality better, and it's going to make your sanity stay in check. All right, so
you just answered my second. I was going to ask a follow-up, and that was that. Yep, because I was going to say, how do you identify it? How do you know when to try to what's something that you can reduce versus something that you have to do by hand?
Just always look for it.
Yeah.
Anything you can do, like this has to sort of, kind of use more agile terms, right? But you just have to constantly be looking at feedback and looking at data and seeing how things work. And I would say that maybe if there's a practice to sort of implement there, like come up with a good way to see what it is that you're doing, right? Find ways to monitor it. There's an old axiom that's stated in management, which is if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. It's still true. It's maybe a little corporatese for my taste.
I know you love the corporatisms.
But,
yes.
But it's true, right? Like find ways to add monitoring to it. Make sure that are your stream levels the way that they're supposed to be? Are you getting the right audio levels? Are you and then, do the things you can't necessarily monitor. Ask questions like, hey, how did it go? Mm-hmm. Like, what'd you guys think? Or can everybody, I've asked on more than one occasion, just in chat, even though it seems like things are okay based on the numbers, I'll ask the audience how things are going, right? Like, hey, does it sound
We've caught some things that way early on that way, too.
We have,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, when it wasn't necessarily showing up.
Right, yeah. Right. So, just anything you can do to kind of like get visibility around what it is you're trying to do, and then being honest enough with yourself, check your ego, to basically say, okay, this isn't right, this could be better, and then try to figure out some solution to it. And that can involve everything from going and doing some research, asking questions about stuff that people that know more about it than you do. You'll learn a lot from that. And then, finding ways to try to implement it. And I think something else that I was trying to basically say, and I probably would have covered more during our conversation, is that you'll find there's a lot more people rooting for you to succeed than not.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I've felt that too, even on a story level, for sure. And I've been like really blown away and surprised. I mean, even at the con, when I was speaking, I was definitely struggling at some points. The graciousness and the care that the people in the room were giving me, just perfect strangers, was like really, really powerful. It was really powerful. Well, I guess the last thing, specifically tech wise, that I wanted to ask you is, well, second to last, because I do want to kind of do like a miscellaneous, catch all at the end, but. And this is, you're not going to hurt my feelings on this one. So so we've had some interesting miscommunications as far as me being the storyteller and you being the producer. Like when I thought that Lady Vale's, this is like when the child is hitting the Fisher Price or the Easy Bake Oven or something, or the Fisher Price phone and thinking it's doing something. I thought that her theme song was in there. And it wasn't, and then we had to go, and that was my own ignorance. And like I've had to learn, even if you are a creative and you're a Luddite like me and you can barely stand to deal with, cell phones and email, if you were gonna stream, you were gonna have to understand at least like the basics of what your production crew is using. It's just the way of it. Believe me, I resisted it as long as I could. what have been the most important pieces of you, or facets, if you want, of you being able to effectively communicate with the other essential aspects of the team? You know, like, so you know way more about this stuff now than any of us do. How have you communicated that, and then how have you dealt with your own frustrations when, like, we're not hearing you, or when I'm still asking you for things that you know are not sustainable? Does that make sense? Like, how has it been on the other side of that equation?
So if I catch your meaning right, I would say, so I think some of this comes down to basically having that trust that we were speaking about a little bit earlier.
Role important.
Because that's going to be real hard to overcome if you feel like everyone's just going to attack you the moment that you say that something's got to be done or whatever.
Or can't be done.
Or can't be done.
Or shouldn't be done.
Be done.
That's another one, because sometimes we can do it, and you're like, yeah, we can do it, but that's...
Yeah. So I tend to be the one that is super concerned with, like, the sustainability of it all.
As well as what you have to be.
And so for me, my goal is to say, I would say, if you're going to want to do something, come to me early and let me think of some way to try to figure out how to make that work.
I've learned that.
And that helps a lot. Like that, being able to kind of work through the problem and figure out a way to integrate it with your existing setup or equipment or whatever goes a long way to being able to make it something that you can deliver on well. And even if I can't necessarily try to, even if I can't necessarily deliver on that, I'll try to basically bring the spirit of what that thing is as much as I can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and sometimes it's not even like you've directly asked for something, right? We'd like to do more things where we kind of use theme music around the characters, or we try to basically use something where we're trying to...
Something just to keep going. Something just occurred to me about the music. Yeah.
Yeah. But, I will try to bring some of that in, not because you necessarily directly asked as a story creative thing on this. It's more like, okay, I know more along the lines of what you're going for.
Yeah.
And so I want to try to bring more of that, like, movie feel to it, or whatever that it kind of, in my head kind of views it that way. But, how can I basically help deliver something like that? And I'd say it goes the other way around too. I know we don't talk about this either, but I know that people are, sitting up more, or they're thinking about where they are relative to the mics, or
being on mic. And,
people are, presumably not doing this on screen or whatever, even if they've maybe had a long day. And it's those sort of things. I feel like it's got to be a good give and take. And I know that this sounds a little cliche, but man, so much of it just comes down to trust and being able to communicate early about what the real intent is. The other side of that is the people receiving the information have to be willing to
be receptive to it.
Right? Like the feedback specifically.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make a request, but if someone on the other end says, that's not something I can do, there has to be a good amount of, like, give and take on that. And to me, that's one of the things I'm most proud of with this effort, especially between our founders, that I've really felt like is the most important thing so far, is that we've really felt like, I don't know, I mean, it seems like we've all been pretty honest around what it is we're trying to do, and
pretty consistent.
Which, I think
pretty consistent on it. I
think we've all tried to really make sure that we're doing what we need to do as much as we can, and I think we'll continue to do it, and we'll continue to struggle with it, and we'll continue to, like, debate over it, and that's okay, because it's all driving us towards a better product and a better outcome and a better story,
yeah,
and hopefully to do new and interesting things even beyond just, like, doing a channel and a stream one day.
because I have to be respectful of the time that we have blocked off for this. I'm going to sit on that question about music, but we have a I can circle back around to it, because I'm going to interview Steve actually just a few days from now. Steve Gurnis, our amazing music director, who's made the whole musical vocabulary for Darkeport, and I'll put the music question to him too. So the last thing though, because it would be, I'd be remiss if I didn't get this in. So is there anything else if me and, four of my buddies want to start streaming, is there any other thing that I haven't covered yet as an interviewer, Justin, or you haven't expanded that you really want to get out there to them to say, hey, this is an important thing for you to do, or here's some encouragement, here's some inspiration, approach, whatever, however you want to do that. Basically a catch-all of let's get it out there, let's get it on film so that the information is circulating.
Someone actually came up to me at the end of the con over the second panel that we did and asked me some of that stuff.
Okay.
I guess I'd been sitting on that all day.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think we covered some of that already. Really, it's like have a vision of what it is you want to try to do. Kind of be honest about what it is you want to try to do, and then start practicing it. Actually go through the motions, and you will learn more through the act of trial and error and trying to get things up and running that you just won't get any other way. Obviously, don't skimp out on doing the research and looking things up and being able to try to get learn from people that know more about it than you do, because why you don't have to learn everything the hard way. But honestly, just try to get it out there and figure out what you can do, and you'll find, just like I feel like we have, is that you'll find your style, you'll find your niche, you'll find.
Can we put a couple different resources in the description when we're done with this? Okay. Yeah, no, I think that would be good. I mean, you've heard me say this many times before now, but it is my sincerely held belief that better stories make better humans. Mm-hmm. So I really want more people to be able to access this, which leads me my own segue. I've segued myself into my final question, because I'm going to shoehorn this into every single freaking interview I do, because I think it's really important. So I have a contention, and when I spoke with Alex Bro, who is the GM for Constructed Chaos, who is my first interview, my first victim, I asked him a very similar question, which is, so it's my contention, or it's kind of my expanding theory, that we right now, in the people who are streaming role-playing games, something that has been part of our lives for, basically almost all of our lives. I mean, it has more than my adult life,
right?
And something is going on that's different. This is a different field. This is a different deal. This is not only is this not your mother's basement, but this is now huge projects, huge elaborate projects made by incredibly talented people, both cinematic universes and animated series and just all kinds of stuff. From your perspective as both a gamer, a lifelong gamer, and a producer now, which is not a perspective that I can have basically by definition while I'm storytelling, what do you think is going on in terms of does this feel to you like a new medium, the way that it feels to me, that this is something that hasn't exactly existed before? Or does this just feel like a retooled, live studio audience or a radio? My dad talks about how, maybe I should interview him. He had a really interesting perspective too, because he's an old school gamer, about how this hits him like a radio show, like an old school radio show would. What is your perspective on that? Do you think this is something new that's happening, or do you think this is just a slight tweak on parts? And however you want to answer that, I'd be interested. I've never asked you that question specifically, because I wanted to save it for now.
I honestly, it's weird. I find myself constantly thinking about putting together a show that's closer to the late 80s or 90s even. And a little bit of that feel perhaps, and maybe it's just nostalgia on some of our parts that we do that. That's I think
fun. Right. Previously on Darkeport.
Yeah.
I love that. We all so geeked out. I said, we finally are the people who get to do it, Justin. I was so happy when he showed me that.
We love our X-Men.
Yeah.
Previously on Darkeport.
Yeah.
We are... I think... I don't know if I necessarily view it as a new medium. I think it's more of a I think it's just a growth of what we're seeing, and honestly, the technology and the capability of what you can do with the equipment and whatnot for the price is so far beyond what it was even 10 years ago that it's much easier to kind of get into this sort of thing. And the same way that the technology has become a lot more accessible for everything around social media and around communications. And I mean, everyone's walking around with a cell phone these days where
hence my earlier point about, just pulling it out and doing it.
I think it's just that I think it's become a much more accessible thing. I think that there has been a cultural shift around people who are becoming old enough to do that sort of thing these days.
I think inarguably there's been a cultural shift,
I mean, when we were growing up, it was a big thing where there was just like a lot of technophobia, and it wasn't really that. I mean, people just didn't want to touch computers, or they just didn't want to, deal with,
especially where we were at.
And so, that real. I mean, you talk to someone that's 20, 25 today, that's just not in their vocabulary. That's just not a thing. But you go back, 35, 40 years, especially, like, you're not going to find people that were even, a little bit older than that were comfortable with it. So I think it's been a cultural shift. I think the technology has made it a lot more possible. I think in terms of the, storytelling and whatnot, man, Alex gave such a good answer to that question.
He did.
But I think that I don't know. I think there's just maybe my feeling that there is a sense that you want to be able to put something out in the world is maybe a much more common sort of feeling that some people have.
I was going to say, I would push back to the extent of saying, the democratization of the technology, I think itself has an impact on the medium. Because now we don't have to have a multi-million dollar studio to do these things, and that's I don't know. Like I said, this is still even from the time that I spoke with Alex, this is still not like a fully formed. It's in Choate. I'm having a really hard time totally wrapping myself around what I'm feeling because I'm inside it. But I'm gonna be asking that question basically anybody. Okay, so to you it looks like a throwback, but with better tech.
I think what I'm saying is if this had been around, maybe. Well, I think it's two things. I think if the technology had been around 20 years earlier, and we'd had people that were as comfortable with technology as they are today. Well, more specifically, not to technology, the socialization of what they're doing. I mean, we've talked about this before, right? Like, we feel like, Generation X was kind of the last generation that kind of grew up like they felt like they were isolated in the world. And, one of those things that you have growing up that I think about from a father perspective is that anything that can happen can basically be, recorded and put up on a social media site forever. And that is just not something we had to deal with.
Thank God. Thank God.
So it's a very different view of the way the world works. And so I think that this idea of being able to tell your story or being able to just share what you're going to be having for dinner or something and posting it was just it's a much different cultural view of how these things work. And so anybody that basically is in a position to want to tell a good story or feels like I want to share something, I think they're both culturally more encouraged to do so, comfortable to do so. And the technology has become much more accessible to allow them to do so. So I don't know if the thought that
maybe that's what I'm feeling. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to sit with that.
I don't know if it's necessarily that we've got more people necessarily being more creative than they used to be, or there's necessarily some driven thing where
I don't think it's a base creativity shift or anything.
I agree that. That there's just a ton of just regurgitated, recycled, reused stuff that's coming out of Hollywood or wherever.
And this is not. This is not. Yeah.
I am kind of weary of having my childhood remade over and over in terms of what movies are coming out or whatever.
Yeah, it's super derivative.
But I will say that yes, that could be a factor. But I think that the reason that we're seeing it emerge is because what we used to do, where this used to be kind of taboo, has become a much more accepted thing to do. The idea that we have the technology that's allowing people to be able to do this stuff at a much better price or much more accessible, and there's a cultural shift where people are just a hell of a lot more comfortable being in front of a camera than we ever were, because that's just the way they grew up. I feel like you've got sort of this trifecta or this confluence of all those things making it come together to kind of put it out into the world.
Yeah, getting in front of that was another one for this one that was not the best, not the easiest, but here we are. Well, Justin, thank you so much for taking this journey with me. It's been an honor and a privilege, and Darkeport would not exist without you.
Well, thank you. Same.
So, yeah, and upward and onward, and we're going to see how that goes. We're going to see what the future holds, eh?
Yeah. I will say I hope that not too far from now we'll be able to put out some behind the scenes / how to stuff that we've done here. So hopefully those will be videos you'll be able to see soon. Yeah,
I'd love for there to be a whole series basically where you take one chunk at a time, and walk folks through of, okay, this is what I did. Alex, yet another video we can put up. Alex's How to Stream Like a Pro, the one that he put on, and he hits a lot of stuff, but you could really do a deep dive for people who are stuck or having issues with some particular aspect of the production.
Yeah. Now I'll warn everybody. I don't have an AV background or any of that stuff, so it's all been sort of self-taught. But I can definitely tell you what I've done wrong and what I've learned.
You maybe not a background, but you kind of have a functioning skill in it now. I would say. I think that's fair.
But other than that, if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to contact me, Justin@darkeport.com, and I'll be happy to get into it.
Awesome. Thank you again, and to our faraway friends who sat with us and had this conversation with us. Thank you so much for your time and your attention and your continued support. It means the world to us. We literally can't do this without y'all. Thanks so much. And as you take your journey out there, stay safe and stay curious. See you next time.